Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another character analysis here on the Star Wars miniatures themed New Republic Ryan channel. You may notice I voted early in New York City today. Little sticker. I decided to leave it on because this is not a political channel here, but Star Wars Andor specifically is political. You know, if you live in a democracy and you're watching this from a democracy, you should go out and exercise your democratic right to vote, as I think Star Wars has always stood for democracy. So, yeah, just that's a little thing. I should say that I love Andor, and I love that Andor is political. I think it's a great strength of Andor that it is so relevant and interesting. So I'm pro Andor. I love Andor. Let's talk about Andor. Let's talk specifically about the Imperial Security Officer. Yeah, this guy, you may recognize the white uniform of the ISB. This guy could easily be Hirtor or Lonnie, or probably not Partigaz. I don't think he looks quite like Partigaz, but he's got kind of a Hirtish look to him, right? If you haven't watched Andor, you should probably stop watching this video and go watch Andor, because Andor is fantastic. And yeah, just do that. And I'm gonna spoil Andor lightly when I talk about this character. But let's talk about the history of the ISB first, because the ISB, as you may note, predates Andor. That's why, although this was a Star Wars miniatures game from way before Rogue One or Andor or anything like that, we do in fact have ISB characters in it. Although the card refers to him as, if you're reading it, you may note it says Imperial Intelligence Bureau. I did a lot of Wikipediaing to try to figure out if that was a separate thing. I don't think it is. I think Wizards got confused. There was a lot of confusion about Imperial intelligence branches in the EU for a while, but eventually towards the end of the EU, and by the time this character was printed, so they really should have had it straightened out, they had kind of coalesced around the idea of the ISB. But the ISB dates back to the 1987 West End Games role-playing sourcebook, which is the source for a lot more Star Wars than you would expect. If you've never read about this West End Games role-playing game from the 80s, it's incredibly influential to modern Star Wars, both in Legends and the current Disney canon. The ripple effects are tremendous, and one of those is the ISB, the Imperial Security Bureau. It was taken a little bit further in the 90s when the Decipher collectible card game, customizable card game, identified Colonel Wolof Yularen, was it Wolof probably, Yularen, as a member of the Imperial Security Bureau in the Death Star meeting room in A New Hope. Again, that Star Wars CCG was so influential in naming lots of background characters for the EU, and some of that stuck into the Disney canon, mostly through Filoni, onto other stuff through the shows. So that, yeah, there's some overlap between the old EU and the modern era. Like there's an Ahsoka miniature in the Star Wars miniatures game, right? Because Clone Wars was airing when this miniatures game was going on, and Ahsoka persevered into Disney to become a main character. So the ISB is one of those things that went from Legends to canon. In Legends, the ISB had more of a counterintelligence, internal affairs focus. I think my memory of the ISB most strongly comes from Timothy Zahn's books, where they would sniff out dissent in the Imperial ranks. They kind of had a reputation as as rebel hunters. You know, I think they're the secret police of the Imperials in a way, as we see on Andor, right? But I think Andor is kind of a more depiction of them as conference room people, running the big show, whereas in Legends EU, old Star Wars, they did a lot more field work. You'd find them, you know, throughout the ranks, in the field, hunting down rebels, leading, kind of doing what here does at the very end of Andor, leading strike teams to go capture rebels or go arrest dissidents or suspected traitors, people who had voiced concerns. There's a really memorable scene in one of Zahn's books. I couldn't remember which one, but it's one of those Mara Jade books where she teams up with the rogue stormtroopers, where an ISB officer is called in because a stormtrooper is noticed to be deliberately missing his shots when executing civilians. And there's a stormtrooper that's shooting a little too high in the firing squad, so the ISB comes in and sniffs him out. And that's kind of the catalyst for this book of a stormtrooper squad going on the run, because the ISB is like, you weren't executing civilians properly. What's wrong with you, stormtroopers? So that's kind of what their function was. We see them a little more focused on rebels, I think, in Andor, but they had more of this internal affairs energy in the EU. But they were always depicted, I think, as fairly formidable. Like when they come up, it's like everybody it would definitely strike fear in the Imperial ranks to hear the idea of, oh, the ISB, you know, don't say that you felt bad about shooting those civilians, or the ISB is going to come get you. You know, if your performance standards aren't up to where they need to be, the ISB is going to come get you. So they were kind of a freaky, threatening thing, and I think that's how West End Games had originally intended them to be. And you know, you can see that this uniform, this white uniform that Yularen wore, has persevered into the modern conception of them, and I think that's really fascinating. So yeah, that's kind of the history of the ISB. They evolved over the years through all these different little iterations in the EU, becoming more and more prominent until they've really been seized on, I think, by Filoni. You know, did his little grandfathering you into canon thing with the ISB. Yularen appears in Clone Wars, actually, young Yularen. He's got a card in this game. I didn't want to talk about it because it's kind of a different thing than the ISB. It's his Clone Wars era. So I'm not going to get into the Yularen card, because he's such a small character in Andor anyway that it would be a little deceptive. But I want to talk about the Imperial Security Officer in this game. So let's get into his card. He is depicted as a little more of a fighter than a commander, which is a little odd to me. I don't know why he doesn't have a commander effect. Very baffling. Almost nobody in this entire game named Officer doesn't have a commander effect. I guess maybe because they're thinking of him as a officer in the sense of like police officer and not like officer. Odd. Because you don't really see ISB guys running around on their own just doing stuff. They're always leading a team of stormtroopers or somebody, you know, or Imperial or Navy troopers or someone. They're not like really doing stuff on their own. So I don't know why he doesn't have a commander effect. It's very strange to me. But his abilities do kind of reflect what you'd expect from an Imperial intelligence agent. He's got cunning attack. You know, obviously quite cunning. Deadly attack is interesting. I guess they're trying to imply that he's a good shot. And then, of course, the most reasonable is it's a trap. Enemies within 6 squares lose stealth. because this guy, after all, is a spy hunter. He's a rebel hunter. He's a dissent hunter, and he's going to go and find people who have stealth and take out their stealth. So that's kind of his function in the game, as represented on the card, is with it's a trap. He's going to go and take away people's stealth, which is interesting. Especially for Imperials, because rebels are so adept at doing stealth. There's so many stealthy rebel commandos out there. Even rebel heroes that have stealth. And so I think for the Imperials, maybe more than any other faction, they want to have those anti-stealth guys. So this guy is, I think quite useful in some ways. He's a little expensive. 20 points just to detect people within 6 squares who lose stealth. It's kind of expensive. He's not bad at fighting. I mean, deadly attack, cunning attack. You know, if he's hitting you first, he's hitting for plus 12 and 30 damage, with the possibility of a crit on a 19 or 20. He's got 18 defense, 50 health. That's decent stats. Again, too expensive, I think, for what he does. If I were to have made this guy, I would have made him someone that gives allies within 6 squares. It's a trap, right? Someone who enables other Imperials to find out where the rebel spies are, and he's got to kind of like be within 6 squares of a rebel to go be, oh, there's a rebel. You lose stealth. Look, I see that rebel over there. Get him. Which is like very, very odd. I think. I mean, I get the reasoning, right? Like you send him around the map to go sniff out the rebel commandos and spies and hunt them down and point them out for the stormtroopers to shoot. But functionally, I've always found that it's a trap. It's not tremendously useful because you do have to get within the 6 squares of the stealth person to point them out and make them visible to everybody else. So, you know, there's better ways to take away stealth, like accurate shot and, force sense. There's that one Palpatine's bodyguard who just like removes stealth from everybody on the map, which is just like way better. It's a trap is not the best way to take away stealth. I guess it's a little more useful in some ways than accurate shot, because if you get him within 6 squares, then anyone can shoot him, regardless if they have accurate shot or not. And again, you know, the rebels are so stealth heavy that I think this is quite a good, reasonable counter to the rebels, to have an Imperial, Security Bureau officer out there finding those stealthy rebels and pointing them out for the stormtroopers and to take on. But 20 points, that's a lot. He should be like 15 points or 16 points, maybe. Again, the hit points and defense are nice, but 20 points is a lot. I think if you want to play like an Andor-themed game, and have an ISB officer in it, you know, for fun, he is very reasonable to do that with. You know, if you are sitting down and you're like, oh man, I just watched some Andor, I want to play a Rebels and Imperials game and theme it around that, then this guy fits perfectly, fantastically even. You know, he absolutely does a great representation of representing a Imperial Security Bureau officer. I think maybe shown to be in this game, as in the old EU, a little more competent at fighting than we see from the ISB's agents on the show, Andor, who are mostly portrayed as like boardroom bureaucrats, and are not great probably in a firefight. You know, Krennic himself is shown to be decent in a shootout, but like most of these guys, you put them in a fight against the rebel trooper, they're probably gonna get killed. Dedra really blows that first raid on Luthen, and then you know, here blows the second raid on Cassian. So and Clea. So, you know, this guy is probably a better fighter than the ones on Andor. But I think that's just because in the EU they were depicted as more field agent people who would lead these raids and confront the rebels hands-on rather than just sit in boardrooms and be masterminds. And I'm not really sure if in the rest of the canon, actually we do see more field agenty type ISB agents in the video games. In certainly they're the one they wear the armor in Battlefront 2. They actually there's that armored look that Callus has. That's from more like the ISB when they go out to fight somebody. I'm not sure why Lonnie didn't wear that and just wears more of not Lonnie here. Somebody who's more versed in the Disney ISB Rebels show could maybe explain that better than me. I'm more of a Legends guy who's fascinated by stuff that's overlapped into Disney. But certainly I think there are ISB agents in the Disney canon who are better at fighting, more like this character represents, even though he's dressed in the uniform of the more boardroom ISB agents of Andor. But still, I think a fun piece, really cool. I'm always so fascinated by the stuff that has survived from the 1980s legends of Star Wars, 1987 West End games, all the way to Andor. Like what a legacy that is for the ISB, right? To still be an important part of Star Wars decades later. And who knows that if that would have survived, if this card from 1995 hadn't identified Yularen as a guy in the Death Star conference room in the white outfit, right? Like, you know, it's also interesting to me, the legacy of Star Wars and how it goes on. I love it. Yeah, so this was a lot to talk about one character, but I hope you found it interesting. Again, I love Andor. It's so good. I find it a deeply inspiring show. I was looking for any excuse to talk about it on this channel, and then finally I ended up with this guy, and I was like, oh wow, I can't believe the miniatures game did this. So it's so good to have great Star Wars like Andor. It's so good to have this miniatures game, and to have them intersect is a fun little dream. So I'm happy that this guy landed in my lap, and it has been fun talking about it. So I hope you enjoyed the video. As always, may the Force be with you, and vote in your local elections, and all elections, but especially those local ones, because they might slip by you. Thanks for watching.